really want to thank you guys for coming out of your busy schedules to come here tonight. And I'm seeing new faces, and I'm really excited to meet all of them. But if you don't know me, my name is Mohamed Kamal. I go by Kamal, people who don't know me. And I run a unique type of incubator here in Santa Monica. And I focus in technologies like AI and blockchain for now. Ultimately, you want to help those with audacious ideas to come to reality by providing some serious capital and interesting mentors and advisors. At the core, I'm really a nerd from Sudan. People know where Sudan is? Good. And as a teen in the 90s, I was building programs that really wanted them to think. And that led me to come here in the United States to study computer science. And right after that, I worked for AOL, Booz Allen, and then worked at Sirius XM Radio. However, I always felt that I can do more. And does anyone relate here? And I believe everyone here in this room believes in the same thing that puts us all together, which is basically the need to impact more people. Everybody does it differently. Some people do it with business, with tools, technology, music or film, and even mentorship, which kind of like leads me to tonight's discussion. And they're going to like three things. A, how can we have a bigger impact in the world through business or through our personal lives? How can innovative technologies are creating quantum leaps, and how can you use these technologies? And what goes inside the minds of people who think big and bold? That's actually where I'm at. And I'm really interested in knowing most of these people. A good friend of mine, and also a mentor in my incubator, gave me this really great advice. And he said, Kamal, you want to help your companies grow 10x or 10 times? Disruptive technologies are not enough. You need to surround them with exceptional people. And this is one of the scarcest resources out there to some extent. So I want to have him come here for the stage for a second. The guy went to Wharton Business School. He came from McKinsey and has a degree in mechanical engineering. And he has an equation named after him. Seriously. So let me welcome to the stage Rohit Basi. Please come over.
Hi everyone, good evening. I am a nerd from New Zealand, and they do exist. There are only 4 million of us, so I'm one of 4 million. But Kamal and I sort of met a couple of years ago when we started talking about how do we help companies grow big, grow 10x. And while Kamal talks about the big ideas, I'm the execution guy. And I sort of make things simple, and how do we deliver those things. And as we talked about this event, and we talked about how exactly do companies make this happen, there are two themes that came to me. And this is a culmination of years of operating experience and, quite frankly, butting heads. And the simple themes are people and talent. One of my mentors is actually sitting in this room. He taught me very early on that talent acquisition is a war. It's actually not a choice. And very often when I come to these events, people talk about product, they talk about capital, but very rarely do I hear them talk about people. Who do I need? Who do I need 3 months from now? Who do I need 6 months from now? And when I talk to entrepreneurs, specifically in the early stage, they talk to me, it's like, hey, I can't afford a great developer, I can't afford a great marketer. The reality is that if you find talent, grab them. And in my experience, you'll figure out what to do with them once you have them. And quite frankly, great talent will figure itself out. And they'll pick up the ball before you even know it. People talk to me about, hey, my overhead is going up. And trust me, I know about overheads. And one of the things I tell them that is if you can't get them full-time, get them part-time. If you can't get them part-time, make them your advisor. But hold on to them. Talent is gold. And that's something that Kamal and I often talk to our startups about as to how to keep recruiting. Always be recruiting is one of our key things that we talk to most of our companies. The second thing is focus. It's very easy, especially for early stage startups, to lose that focus. Especially when you talk about innovative technologies. There's a lot to do. There's markets that you can go after. There are segments you can go after. There's different applications you can go after. One of the companies that I work with today is in health tech. And it's a platform technology where we're delivering molecules, be it drug or nutrition, through your skin. So we're fundamentally changing the way you basically get nutrition. We're changing the way that you get drugs. As you can imagine, the applications are huge. And being a platform technology, there's a lot of scope creep. Every day somebody comes up with a new idea. So what we did was we became very militant about it. And instead of focusing on one or two ideas, we went and focused on an idea, then a subsegment within that idea, and then we took one application within it. We actually are focusing on 1% of the revenue potential of the company. The benefit of that was success. And what success did was, and the way we measured it, is in 7 months, we've gone from an idea to a product that's being manufactured at scale. That's something that not many startups are able to do if they don't remain focused. And so as Kamal and I talk to our startups and the startups individually, that's one of the key things that we look at, and we help our entrepreneurs saying, hey, every day, every week, stay focused. And it's okay to get distracted, and it's okay to be fearful that I'm not capturing the biggest opportunity, I'm not capturing the biggest revenue. But the reality is that bit by bit you get there. So with that, Kamal is now going to talk about a bigger framework, something that's huge and massive. And again, I'm going to keep things simple and execution focused. I'm going to have him talk through it and then enjoy the talk. Cheers.
Thank you, Basi. First name Rohit, by the way. So who's ready for tonight's program? Are you ready for tonight's program? Come on. Our guest today has no disregard for the impossible. I'm actually wild about this individual. He received countless awards and was named one of the 50 greatest leaders by Fortune magazine. He founded 17 companies in total, but just to name a few, he's a co-founder and executive chairman of Singularity University, the chairman and CEO of the X Prize Foundation, co-founder and vice chairman of Human Longevity Inc., a company that's goal extending the human lifespan by 30 years. He's also the co-founder and co-chairman of Planetary Resources. This company's actually mining asteroids. How big can you think? So please help me welcoming a man who inspires me to think bold and think big. I call him the master of moonshots. Please welcome Peter Diamandis.
Finally taller than you.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. How are you?
Good, man. So I got to think, did you think I was like, I needed this wide? Or I was going to fall asleep?
I think it's as bold as it ventures. That's what I think it is. How are you?
Good, man. Good.
Thank you so much for coming. I want to start by the most important thing is ultimately here in Silicon Beach, most of the people here are mostly startups, investors who invest in companies that looking for gains in the next 5, 6, 7 years, but companies that are scientifically based that might get returns 7 to 8 years. And getting inside that entrepreneurs wants to go behind that. And mind you, in 2004, Peter Diamandis raised $10 million for the Insider X Prize about 12 years ago. So I just want to go inside your head. And what were you thinking back then in terms of, okay, I need to go big, I need to think outside the box. So let's go back to that time. And what was Peter thinking? Where was he at? For the people who can hear back there, sorry.
Okay, so we're going to pass the mic back. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have always believed there is plenty of money in the world. Right? Money is not a scarce resource. It just isn't. For the right idea, communicated in the right way, there's all the money you need. Period. If you're not getting the capital, it's because this is me speaking for myself. I'm not conveying the idea in a confident or clear enough fashion, or it's not a great idea, or they don't just get it yet, and I need to work harder to get there. But when you think about the three things that make anything happen, it's people, technology, and money. Right? So those three things in combination drive anything. And when you think about it, the right people with the right amount of money will go and build a technology that's called R&D. And over and over and over again, we see the right team of individuals do stuff that is the day before impossible. And it's like, holy shit, where'd that come from? Or why did they do it when no one else was able to do it? And it wasn't that, they had different necessarily technology or access to more money. It was the right people were able to process that information and really work hard enough or think intelligently enough or solve the right problems to make it happen. So people and money can create the technology, and then people and the right people and the right technology can attract the capital. And that's crowdfunding, that's venture capital, but technology and money without the right people is useless. It's useless matter. And I agree completely with Rohit, where are you? There you are, in the back. Talent is like the most important thing, bar none. It's number one, number two, number three. As an investor, with my dear friend Max over here, wherever he is, there isn't, pop up in the back. We just started a venture fund here called Bold Capital Partners, raised $100 million. And the realization is that vacuum cleaners need to clean all day long. The realization is that you ultimately, as an angel investor or venture capitalist, you back people. The technology, the marketplace is cool too. But anyway, so when I originally announced the X Prize in '96, I announced the prize without having the $10 million. It's a long story. Part of it's written in my last book, Bold. And ultimately, it took 8 years to raise the capital. But for me, it was like I refused to give up because I was so absolutely fundamentally convinced that it was a great idea. And that's one of the questions you have to ask yourself as an entrepreneur is, when do you give up? Right? I mean, because there are other, there's 17 companies I talk about. There's another dozen companies that I don't talk about that I was involved in that were my get-rich-quick schemes that I started, and that's like, okay, I'm gonna make money with this thing. And then ultimately, I gave up because it was an idea to make money. It wasn't an idea that I cared about.
That's really interesting to me because there's a shift that happened to you, I believe, where thinking, okay, so especially with your company Zero G, thinking about I've heard you always wanted to go to space, yeah. And you've started 2 universities before that, a university before that. So to me, a simple guy from Sudan, I'm thinking that's a bold move. So were you always felt that when you were talking about your ideas, they thought they were audacious back then, or you just really believed you can actually do it?
So that's interesting, right? So there are 2 things, and we've had some conversation about this, which is, in order to do anything big and bold, it needs to have an emotional engine behind it. Meaning, whatever you're doing that's really hard needs to be something that you are massively pissed off about or massively excited about, because it's that emotional engine that drives you, that forces you, that keeps it going, right? It's like the vision of what you're going to create, and we have to connect to it. So space, as you know, had been my dream since childhood, and I always believed that NASA was going to get me there. And then when it became absolutely obvious to me that NASA was the last person who was going to get me there, don't start me on that. It became, I started thinking, well, if I want to go so badly, others want to go too, and why not? And Zero G came out of a frustration that I couldn't get on NASA's parabolic airplane company. And we are, just an FYI, if anybody's sincerely interested, it's not cheap, it's $5K a seat, but I'm going to be bringing the airplane out here on August the 14th, out here in the LA area, to go do Friends and Family Zero G flights. So if you're Okay, if you're really interested in 5K, I'm not here to pitch, but if you're interested, let me know. We're doing a flight out here. And it took me 11 years to get that company from a, oh, this will be easy, let's do it, right? Naivete is a great driver, because if I knew it was going to be 11 years in rewriting FAA regulations and battling the entire bureaucracy, and I mean, I would have never.
Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, it would have been insane. So it was. So it's all about that emotional engine. That whatever you're doing that's important in your life, are you connected to it emotionally?
So a question for you that I see that I tend to want to ask, especially people who are very motivated, is when did you feel that you're actually that's my break? Was it with the Ansari X Prize or something before that? Like,
wow.
that was my break. That's what I say. You mentioned the book Super Credibility.
Yeah.
What was that break?
So that's, we here in Hollywood in particular, we talk about breaks, right? I think there was a number of, I see my life in incremental chapters, of steps that I took. And my first break, I think my real first break was actually getting into MIT and going there. And then my next break was starting, my first organization was called SEDS. It was a college space organization, Students Exploration and Development of Space. And it was an idea that I postered, back in the days when you used to actually rub off letters onto paper and photocopy it and like stick it up on walls. And SEDS went from a meeting at MIT to a nation international organization, and that was like, oh my God. It was the first time, and I wonder about that because it was the first time I actually tried something and it worked. And if it had failed, would I have retrenched? But was it the addiction to having an early success that allowed me to go on, right? In retrospect, if it had failed, I would have just, hopefully tried the next thing. And I probably had failures before that, but when you do something, no matter how small it is, that succeeds, and you get that rush of that success, and other people see you in that success, it imbues you, it empowers you to do the next thing, right? And it's just a sequence of doublings. It's going from 1 to 2, and 2 to 4, and 4 to 8, and that exponential growth we speak about. And people say, well, how the hell did you start, have the audacity to think about asteroid mining or human longevity? It's like, yeah, it's like the 17th company. It's not the first company. And so it doesn't matter. Everybody will get there if you keep on building on, do something you can do now within the capital abilities of your ability, within the relationship abilities you have. Do it successfully, have people watch you, and then do the next thing. Whatever level, whatever energy level you are in life.
And you notice that, especially with the companies that you're incubating and investing in Singularity University, most of these companies I know are focused on helping 1 billion people, and that's actually a very bold endeavor. So I know you joined with Ray Kurzweil to join Singularity University, and you're just really going after really bold initiatives. A, why? B, do you think you can really do it?
So the first point is, if you can, why not? Right? I mean, the answer of why, the question is an important one. Why do that? And I think the most important answer is we're living in a world where you can. And that's a really important distinction from any time ever in human history. We're living during a day and age where a great idea, not all the other accoutrement that required, but a great idea. It's like speaking the words and having it. It's a godlike power of speaking the words and having it come into existence. It's the power of an idea, a really great, powerful idea, and that's what this community here is all about, as entrepreneurs, right? It's like the idea. It's like, oh my God! And when it starts to blossom in your head, you start adding to it. And it's like you bash it up against things, and then that great idea with the right tools and capital, which can be small. It can be simply an app on the right network that can explode into the world virally, can impact 1 billion people. And when we live in a world where that is possible, why would you not want to shoot for that? And so I remember during the first meetings of Singularity University, and let me take a second to point out my dear friend Harry Clore, who's been part of the early faculty, and Will Weissman, who runs our exponential conferences and a number of other areas that I haven't caught up with you on yet. We're living in a time. I remember going up on the board, and it was a big debate during the founding conference of Singularity University, in which we were saying, should the students during the 10-week program work on a project that is real, and actually create a product or service, or should they be coming up with an idea that can impact 1 billion people? And my answer was, of course, both, right? It was, in my Peter's laws that I think Kristen's probably tired of me spouting at home to our kids, but it's like, when given a choice, take both. It's why not start with something that can serve a person on day one, and then grow to 1 billion people in 10 years.
So just to give perspective around Singularity University, can you give me a couple of companies that graduated Singularity Universities, the technologies, and what they're actually doing right now?
Yeah, so there's a number of companies. One of the earliest car-sharing companies, a company called GetAround, that determined that there is a cognitive surplus. They came out of our first summer of 40 students, and they said, if we can build a kit that allows you stick it in your car, and your car, no matter where it's parked, becomes a rentable car. So on an app, I can see where a GetAround car is, and my asset that's a depreciating asset in my driveway, I can enable it, and people can come and use it whenever they want. And I set my price. I can set, the price, whatever it is. Made in Space, that has launched some 3D printers to the space station.
Wow. And
is doing 3D printing. A company called Miraculous that's in the bio. The bio-RNA, early detection of cancer space. There's a company called Matternet that's doing, way before Amazon and Google, been doing drone delivery in the developing world for drugs and packages. It's the notion of in Africa is down, better than anybody, to put a road system into Africa would be $1 trillion investment.
Yes.
To get past the dirt roads and the muds and the tsunami and all so can you skip the dirt roads? Can you skip putting roads in Africa the same way that Africa skipped wireline generation went to wireless? Can you go to a sort of a network of aerial delivery of all products and eventually people? So those are just some. We're just fine tuning. SU now. Will, any others that you call them? Modern Meadow. Modern Meadow is just done a $45 million financing, and they're doing stem cell derived leathers and meats. It's the notion that we actually still produce our protein source from large scale farming will seem sort of perverse and strange and wasteful in the future. That we use 1/3 of our non-ice land mass for cows.
And I think that's pretty audacious and bold for all of that. Just to think that, because here mostly here in Santa Monica, most of the companies we advise, we speak with, yes, we are building the next photo sharing app. That's great. That's cool. However, you're capable of doing more. And just to question a few, you probably are engaged with a lot of these companies as well. Yeah. What do you look for in terms of either an inventor, a scientist, or entrepreneur that, there's something special about that person? And I think either mentor or invest. What do you see? Do you see something about yourself in that person? What do you look for?
That's a great question. So I'm trying to actually focus in on the companies. So it's someone who is a great storyteller, someone who has sufficient confidence, but there's no bullshit factor, right? You trust the person. He's a good person. I have no time for dealing with assholes. And so it's someone who it's their purpose and passion, they're driven. This is something that they care about more than anything else. Again, you guys know this both as entrepreneurs, as investors, as CEOs, as that whatever you start with, it's a fallacy. And you're going to pivot, if you're lucky, once. If, it might be a dozen times, or it might take you forever to get there. And what you really want is someone who is so passionate about it, they refuse to let it go, right? Zero Gravity Corporation is the example. I joke it was an overnight success after 11 years of hard work. It was 11 years of battling the bureaucracy, and I would have never, ever imagined it. But I was so pissed, and it was like, you guys are going to be dead or retired before I give up. I mean, that's the energy
Wow.
that I had dealing with the, and it finally was the FA administrator, an amazing woman, Marion Blakey, that I went to the top. And one of the things I learned is a lot of times everyone below the top is not empowered to say yes. They're only empowered to say no. So you have to literally go to the top if you're doing something that really is truly bold and risky. And X Prize, the same thing, right? I've got a member of my X Prize team here, Elizabeth and Esther. X Prize was a 10-year venture from the time I read The Spirit of St. Louis to the time the X Prize got won. And so many times it was just dead as a doorknob, right? After 9/11 occurred, after Columbia space shuttle crashed, I mean, people were like, who's going to want to fund a $10 million space prize after the shuttle just crashed, or after, terrorism attacks? And it was like, no, this is going to happen. I believe it. It's going to die when I give up, right? And that realization. And so the question so here's the question to all of you guys. Is what you're working on something that meets that test? Is what you're working on something that you care enough about that, you're going to push it and make it happen against all the odds? That it's not just I think it's a good idea, my friend told me it was a good idea, or my mom told me to do it, or whatever the case might be. Or is it something that the struggle in what you're doing is big enough and powerful enough that even if it doesn't succeed, if you've learned and if you moved the market forward, it's something you care about passionately, that will have been a contribution in that regard. Because it matters. It really matters. And if not this one, for your next one. And I open up Singularity University's graduate program, our GSP. It's actually, we renamed it our Global Solutions Program. And we have 80 graduates there. We have 5,000 applicants around the world. We narrowed down to 80. Google funds scholarships for all of them, about $30,000 a person. And I asked them at the first day that I talk is, do you know what your mission and purpose in life is? And I'm continually amazed that even at that level of all of the wickets and thickets and things they've jumped through, a good half don't. So if that includes you, it's not abnormal. I consider myself really lucky that I got my passion in space as a child. It was a blessing, and when I think about what Kristen, my wife, and I want for our kids, it's one of the things is they really find a passion that it will drive them. Because if you have a passion, it drives you to learn, it drives you to do, it drives you, I don't care what the hell the passion is. And if you don't have a passion, your obligation for yourself is to find one. Now let me be very clear. You don't have to have just a single passion in life, right? I went from space to exponential technologies and grand challenges, and longevity has always been a passion. You can develop multiple, but there should be something at that level that really drives you. because that's going to allow you to keep going. You guys all probably know Bill Gross from Idealab, right? Bill Gross has an amazing TED Talk and DLD talk that I commend to all of you. And he asked the question, what is the most important factor relating to a startup's success? Now, Bill's brilliant. I was an Idealab CEO for about a year. He hired me to come out and run a company called Blastoff, which was a startup that he pledged $60 million to land a robot on the moon. And I sold my house in DC in a day and moved to Pasadena. You don't get a $60 million moon mission offered to you that often. Unfortunately, April 2001 occurred and our moon mission splashed down. But amazed by the multitude of companies, so 50, 60 startups, and he went back and looked at it and he said, was it cash? Was it the best funded companies that succeeded? Was it the team with the most successful executive team that have had previous exits and been successful? Was it with the most cutting edge technology? Was it geography? What was it? And I know you know the answer here. It was timing. It's like, what? It was timing. It was the company that was there at the right time, right? SpaceX, as an example, successful today not only because of Elon's brilliance and funding by Steve Jurvetson and a number of amazing people, it was there when the shuttle went out of business. And despite 3 Falcon 1 failures, NASA really needed a solution. Now it happens to have become like the best launch vehicle ever in human history by like an order of magnitude because of brilliance, but it got into business, right? Airbnb and Uber, after 2008, people needed money. And they were willing to drive other people around, willing to rent out their couch. And I see that over and over again. I look back at in my life, right? Timing. So if you're passionate about a project, you're going to stick with it long enough so the timing becomes right. Right? Really, I'm just sharing for me what is like fundamental, level 0 realities.
So thank you for adding to that, because I totally believe also as well that that's the why you do anything that you want to do. And it's something I realize most people who are younger age have a problem with the why. Mid-20s into mid-30s, and I'm in mid-30s, and still sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? However, to some extent, we do have an idea of a why, but it gets crystallized to some point. The why is very important. It seems like you're lucky to get a why at a young age, but then becomes kind of like the how. How do I do it? And the how to me comes from a term that he always says, moonshots. How does Google does that? And him and I went on running one time, only time, and
you can tell me how we met?
Yeah, yes. And he mentioned a really interesting story about Astro Teller, who runs Google X, who now solve for X, and how they do experiments. And that's at a grand scale. Could you please elaborate how actually a company like that is actually taking audacious ideas and how you're actually helping some of the companies you're mentoring or investing, taking some really audacious, bold experiments and bold moonshots?
So, yeah, happily. So AstroTeller runs a division of Alphabet now called X. I think they'll eventually get from A through Z. But and he talks about experimentation a lot. And I put out a tech blog every Sunday, and I put out a series of tech blogs on my conversations with Astro. If you go to diamandis.com, you can see all the past blogs, and you can sign up for my Sunday blogs. So the realization is that most ideas are bad, and you should try and kill them early. And so Astro talks about the importance of celebrating early deaths. And so in X, what they'll do is they will do on their ideas what's called a pre-mortem. Like, okay, you've got a team who's got an idea, and we get together and we're going to brainstorm 2 months from now why this idea died. not a postmortem, not post facto what happened to it. In advance, what do I think? If it's going to die, what will have killed it? And at the end, it might be like, this idea is really shitty. Let's kill it right now. And so one of the interesting insights was when asked, why is Google X so secret? Why don't they have any media? Why don't they talk about what they're doing? Why is it all under NDA and all of that stuff? And Astro's answer was, it's not because what we're doing is so secret. It's that if we're killing 90% of the projects we start, the newspaper media is going to be, Google X fails again. Google X fails again. It's going to make it hard to kill projects. Interesting, right? So if you are able, so one of my thesis for me, I have a team of millennials I work with that my sort of like strike force, Max just graduated out of that. And we get together and we talk about the importance of killing ideas early on. Oh man, I lost my thread of my thought.
Around the ideas.
Anyway, so Google's premise is that, so my thesis for this year is that 3 things are important for a startup. Number 1 is hiring amazing people. Hiring is fundamentally key. The second is putting them into a culture that allows for rapid failure of ideas and embraces innovative and is like you're taking a great person, putting them in a lousy culture, kill them, right? And then the third part is experimentation. And I think great people in a great culture who have the ability to rapidly experiment, just test stuff constantly, will eventually hit on good stuff, right? But maybe you have to try 10 things. So how do you create an engine of hire amazing people, amazing culture, and give them the ability to test and iterate?
Absolutely agree. Some of the startups I work with is your amount of runway is basically the amount of experiments you can run. And if you have enough runway, basically you can run as much experiments as you can. I know that you're very bullish on education and also on health tech.
I'm bullish that they're both going to be massively disrupted. Yes.
Let's start with education first. Where do you see the disruption? Are you talking more about the developing world, or are you thinking more the distribution of it, the content of it?
Both. So, I mean, the problem is that most education today, classical education that we've gone through, that if you have kids, your kids are going through, is roughly the same as education 200 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's the sage on the stage who is basically talking up, half the audience is bored, half the audience is lost. And so the question becomes, how do you change it? And it's really about completely personalized education. So there is going to be, if any of you know Neil Stephenson's work, Diamond Age, there is going to be the Young Ladies Illustrated primer. There is going to be the AI that completely knows your child's passions, favorite colors, sports, movie stars, everything. And in every moment in time that AI is teaching, is constantly teaching. It's like you drop this and you're getting distance equals 1/2 AT squared, and you're watching the curvature of this. And so there's going to be the notion that the ultimate teacher is an AI, and the ultimate teacher, which is better than any possible teacher ever in human history, right, is the same for the son or daughter of a billionaire and the same for the poorest child on the planet. It's a complete democratization of education. And that's what Google is, right? Google is the same for a poor child in Sudan and for Larry Page. It's fundamentally flattened the horizon. And so that is coming. The question is it here in 5 years or 10 years? At most, it's probably 15 years out. And so education starts to split into different elements, right? There's going to be education, the socialization side of education, which is not going to be an AI function, but maybe we'll be doing that more in VR and AR, or maybe it's just classroom play. There's the sports, the skills, but learning, the last way you're going to want to do it is with a human.
So, who's afraid of AI taking their jobs? Any hands? Okay, good. Not a lot of hands, which is great. There is a lot of talk about AI changing the workforce, and most people who are not.
Who's looking forward to having AI come and take your job?
Yeah, that's actually our focus most of the time. But there's actually a big disconnect. Most people think AI is around the Terminator and what exists in the movies and what AI is today. Can you please just give exactly where you think AI is today and where you see AI coming in the future?
Yeah, so AI is a gradation of capability, right? AI is the ability of a computer to gather a bunch of input and solve a problem or answer a question. Google is AI, Siri is AI. AI is embedded in a thousand different things, and people think about AI simply as general AI, a living or a indistinguishable from living computer intelligence, and we'll get there eventually, but along the way, there is going to be increasing independence and indistinguishability from humans. So that's going to be an interesting thing, right? As AI gets stronger and more capable, we're going to be asking the question, what is truly human, right? Is humor human? Well, what if the most funniest comedians in the world are AIs? I mean, I had the pleasure of getting to know Robin Williams before he passed. He had come to a few of our X Prize events, and the guy, his brain was wired differently. It just was. In any conversation, in a microsecond, he was off on a riff that was hilarious. But that's his 100 trillion synaptic connections in his brain doing that. So the question is, can that be emulated? Is love, is beauty, is art? I mean, we already see AI playing in art, but everybody automatically discounts and says, oh, that's not art, that's a computer doing that. Well, what point does it become? Or do we solely define these things as things done by humans? I mean, these are going to be amazing conversations to be had. But the other question becomes, and we think about this as this separation of church and state, there's humans and there's AI. But I think it's going to be, we're on a path to merge with this technology, right? We are on a path to merge with AI and merge with robotics. We are going from evolution by natural selection, Darwinism, to evolution by intelligent direction. We're evolving ourselves. My dear friend Ray Kurzweil, who's got an amazing 83% success rate on his technological predictions, his predictions are in the early 2030s. Let me put this in perspective. That's like 15 years from now, right? It sounds really far away, but it's like 15 years from now, that we're going to have nanobots in our brain, that we're going to be able to, you want more memory capacity? Great. AWS is there for you. You want more cognitive capacity? Sure. Spin up 1,000 processor cores on Google. So what happens? What are we becoming? And there'll be those that do not want to dive into that side of technology. I'm a humanitarian. I'm so pure, right? Or those who say, bring it on. I want the best possible.
Yeah. So the thing about AI and technology overall is just, to us, it also enhances the human experience overall. And unfortunately here I've seen it in Silicon Beach so far is investors tend to shy away from companies who are in the cusp of science fiction. They don't see kind of returns in such companies. They are looking for a great return and whatnot. This is something I'm raising funds for our incubator and whatnot. So I know there's a couple of investors here that I know here. I see them right now. But let's say if we want to voice that to them and we tell them like we need to invest in this, I won't say future technology, more like emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, computing. How can we convince them to say, look, these returns can come back in 5, 10 years, but why are they important to make investment in them right now?
So I think it's going back to fundamental thinking, that these are the most powerful, most scalable technologies in the world. And if you're a venture capitalist and you're not playing in those areas, you're not. I mean, a venture capitalist has to become educated too, and you're not going to go back to school. You're going to become educated by making investments in fields and learning them and following the entrepreneurs and seeing the successes and seeing the failures. So I think the number one reason, if nothing else, is for you to become fluent in the language of those areas of 3D printing, of AI, of robotics, of sensors and networks and synthetic biology. And you don't have to do all of them, right? You pick one or two. But the most interesting thing is that it's going to be less the pure plays and more the convergent technologies where 2 or 3 of these exponentials are coming together, because you can predict reasonably well where a single exponential technology is going over a 2 to 5 year horizon. But it's when these technologies interact with other exponential technologies and come up with new business models that were completely unpredictable. Like I just became an advisor to one company that's playing in the blockchain that is like, it's a $100 billion company or zero. It is either reinventing the entire global economy or not. And it's like these kinds of plays are, I mean, those are the kinds of plays we're going to be seeing more and more and more.
So you're saying like mostly investors need to be educated in technologies first.
I think, listen, one is at a fundamental level, these are the technologies that are going to be not 10 to 1 or 100 to 1. These are the ones that have the potential to be 1,000 to 1. These are the ones that are going to have the network effects. These are the ones that are going to be. I mean, you see in AI, for example, any decent AI company will be snapped up, right? There is a war going on between the high-tech giants, and they will acquire robotics and AI companies that are decent just for talent roll-up and code roll-up and capabilities. So I think they're relatively, if there's a decent business and a great team, I mean, they're solid bets.
Snagged up. We're actually, surprisingly, we're running out of time. So for the next 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to do a Q&A. So I'm going to have the mic here. So any questions? Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Can you please state your name first?
Joe Devin.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to the importance of engagement? Engaging with the community when you have vision and you want to do big things?
So I think it's really important. I'm a huge fan in crowd and community. I think of crowd and community as the interim step to AI. So what do I mean by that? In the future, if I need a piece of something coded, I will just go to my AI and say, could you code me a program that does this? Or I can go to my AI and say, could you create me a logo that looks like this? Or could you design me something that looks like this? And the AI has enough capacity to do any of these things. In the interim, we have got the crowd, right? We've got 99 Designs, we've got Top Coder, we've got, you know, all kinds of different, so I can put out my desire to the crowd and have the crowd or the community actually do some of the work for me in a very, so there's a interim step, if you would, a bridge in that regard. That's one thought. The second thing is, from my standpoint, we're living in a time where on a crowdfunding basis, whether it's reward-based crowdfunding or equity-based crowdfunding, you're able to test out your ideas way before you go down this long engagement path of investments and so forth. So it's like the most efficient way to bring a new idea to life. And it's just about efficiency of cost and time.
But I mean more about community like an event.
Well, I mean more about community like an event tonight, rather than crowdsourcing, like speaking, you know, to get the word out about who you are, what your vision is. Do you feel that had you not had a community of folks who knew what you were trying to do you feel like you would have gotten where you got? Even if
Yeah, so thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
I think community in that regard is important for two things. Number one, when I made my first step of doing SEDS and going from 1 to 2, okay, my first doubling, if you would, in life, I had a community around me who saw me succeed. And then when I said, okay, the next thing we're going to do is create Space Generation Foundation or International Space University, the fact that they had seen the earlier success, they would support me in a bigger way for the next thing. The second thing that community like this is important for is, listen, at the end of the day, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with, right? And if you're in a community of people who are depressing, who are negative, who tell you you don't know what you're doing, you can never do it, forget it, you're not going to get out of bed in the morning. And so one of the things I'm blessed by is having, you know, Singularity University and X Prize as communities where we're constantly talking about, well, that's amazing, but sure, that's going to happen. You know, it's like an expectation of amazement and greatness. And so your idea is too small is the issue, not that it's too big. And so it rises your, you know, your expectations, your abilities. So in that regard.
Any questions? All right.
Melinda.
So in a world that's moving towards AI, and singularity and the power of robots, and now there's a company, you know, that's actually has human beings reporting to robots. How do we as humans maintain the integrity and the heart that is humanity? So I'm sort of curious on your perspective, understanding all the future of technology and singularity, but at the same time, how do we remain heart-centered and be connected to humanity, since we're experiencing so much hatred and animosity just around the world?
We're going to find out.
I'm curious about your perspective on that.
I mean, it's really important, right? This is not a choice we're making. We're heading rapidly in an accelerating fashion in this direction. The second is we're going to be reinventing society. I think one of the things we forget about is we are trying to think about how will all of the things that we do now work in this new way, but we're trying to fix a lot of expectations, the way we work and live and the expectations that we have today while this stuff is all changing. No, it's all going to change. And I think what I'm blown away by is the rate of change. The conversation I have with a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with out of the Bay Area goes something like this: people have no idea how fast things are changing. And so we're going to reinvent a lot of basic premises of morals and ethics and how we live and how we educate and expectations and social structures. And I think we're in a rapid period of reinvention. And so I don't know the answer.
I'm just curious about
I think humanity, so I'll give you one example if I could. I'm going to go deep for a second, so I hope you guys had enough wine in a can. Yeah. So I actually talked about this in Ray Kurzweil's documentary, Singularities, or Transcendent Man, thank you. So if you look at life on Earth is evolved over the last couple of billion years. Earliest life forms on Earth were called prokaryotic cells. They were very simple life cells, single cells with no nucleus, no mitochondria, no organelles. They were just DNA in a bag. And over 1 billion years, they evolved from these prokaryotic cells to eukaryotic cells, which were more complex single cell organisms. But the eukaryotic cells had effectively incorporated technology into them. They had incorporated mitochondria, which were energy power plants, and Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, and cellular and nuclear membranes. And it was a much more powerful, complex, but still a single cell life form. And then that single cell life form became multicellular, and then became differentiated into tissues and organs, and now we are a collection of 10 trillion cells make up each of us. Right? Hard to think of it. 10 trillion human cells make up you and me. And so when I think about where we humans are right now in this evolution, I think we're repeating this process again, where I think we are today at that transition between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. We're the simple individual life form. We think of ourselves as an individual, but we're 10 trillion cells, and we're beginning to incorporate technology into our bodies. Now, the transformation time is much faster in this scenario, but in this transformation, as we start to incorporate technology into our bodies, if Ray is correct, and I'll take his 83% accuracy rate, and we are beginning, and I know companies working on this right now, working on interfacing the brain with the net in different ways. But if we get to a point where we're interfacing the brain with the cloud, there's going to be a point at which we make a choice as an individual: do I plug in? And there are lots of movies, some better than others, that talk about this. But when you plug in, if you imagine being able to plug in and actually know the thoughts, the intimate, honest, open thoughts of everybody else. I can plug into, a young boy watching a sunrise over Tokyo and see that sunrise and understand it and have full bandwidth connectivity. And I plug in, there's 1 billion people. We go from a single individual to what I call a meta-intelligence. The only thing I fault the Star Trek universe for, Harry, who wrote a number of Star Trek episodes here, not fault you, but is making the Borg evil. But there's a world in which a future in which we plug into this meta-intelligence, and it's such an empowerment of knowledge and ability and never being alone, that it is a new level of transformation of existence that exists. And I think it's the difference between you being conscious as a human and your human cell being alive as a living organism. So if you ask me where do I think we're really going, I believe that's where we're going. I think we're becoming conscious at a brand new level, transforming ourselves on and off the earth over this next 30 years.
Thank you. All the way back there.
I need to show you an image. And I've been collecting reactions
Can I show it to the
from
audience
this
as well?
image. Oh yeah.
Okay. Can I show it to the audience as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I just want to get your unfiltered reaction to this.
Oh, yeah, wrong.
Yeah, wrong.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
The image that I'm showing Peter is I did not take this image.
It's like a 2 or 3-year-old kid.
This is an image of
It's like a 2 or 3-year-old
2 or
A VR
3-year-old kid,
headset with-
probably plugged
with
into
controls.
a VR headset.
We have twin boys at home, and I threatened to
How
actually.
old are they?
They're 5 now.
Okay.
I did threaten to put one of them at age 1 onto a VR headset to look at brain development, but do experiment at home. No, so it's so that's a great question, especially following the last point, a point I just made.
It's not even a question. It's what do you think about it in
The
general?
question.
Yeah.
It's what do you think about it in general?
Yeah.
And then of course there's a sub which is the question in that topic, which is what do you think about young children being put into current
Yeah.
technology and how it exists right now?
Yeah.
But it's really more kind of going on to your question really. And it's where we
Yeah.
ended
So
up as humans.
so
And how
so I deal with this all the
So-
time, thinking, and there's a bit of a debate about how much tablet time kids should get, and so forth. And my first reaction is wrong, because that kid should be bouncing a ball and playing with it, and it's about brain development in part. At the same time, we are heading towards a world in which the tools we're going to be using are going to be that times 100 or times 1,000. And the question becomes, what are we trying to maximize over? What is the end result of all this? Are we trying to maximize a child's happiness, a child's earning ability, a child's morality? What are the things what is it as parents or a society we're trying to maximize for? Because there are I remember my dad would not buy me a calculator because he wanted me to learn math. Listen, I haven't, done long division in probably God knows when. Is that a bad thing? Well, I don't actually milk a cow or go and pluck eggs either. And there are people who do, but I don't want to. And so the question becomes, society and times change, and we are under a massively rapid, we're not evolving genetically, we're evolving culturally of what's accepted and what do we do. So is there a future in which a kid is actually spending time in the virtual existence because they can learn much faster there and they can learn skills? Is there a time in which one of the companies that I know very well is working on implanted memories, where if my child can learn tennis by implanting in the hippocampus a series of stimuli that give them the memories up in rapid formation, that now they can go and play tennis. I mean, one of the verboten, to use that German word, conversations is around genetic manipulation, right? But we now have CRISPR-Cas9 technology that is exploding onto the scene these last 3 years. And I'll ask the question, how do you feel about the morality of being able to insert into potentially future kids the highest intelligence genes, or higher growth hormone, or higher musculature, or we're at Human Longevity, we're discovering what are life-shortening genes and life-lengthening genes. If you have the power as a mom to give your child those things, don't you think it's your moral obligation to do that? I mean, don't you? Don't you think it's your best to feed your child the best food and give them the best clothing and give them the best education? Why wouldn't you give them the best software code you could? So, I mean, it's not an easy conversation. And it all matters about what you're optimizing over. But guys, here's the deal. These are the conversations we're having to deal with like right now. It's never been this fast. One of the things I realized recently is that everything our kids do is going to be captured on YouTube and Facebook. It's there for life. So you have to change their understanding of and we're heading towards a world where everything is being imaged all the time, right? We're being imaged right now, but they're going to be micro drones. We now have cameras that are literally microscopic in size. They're going to be implanted every place. Everything is going to be imaged and sensed constantly. You'll be able to go back and say what was going on in the street corner yesterday at 3:02 afternoon and know exactly what it was. So it's going to change what we do and how we think about it. I think it's going to increase morality because people, when they're observed, tend to behave more moral, right? A lot of the dictators and despots suppress people and cause harm in the shadows when no one's looking.
Sorry, guys, this is it for tonight. But these are really interesting questions and controversial questions as well. And I do agree with Peter. We need to answer them right now. I can listen to you for days, man. So, yeah. Seriously. Thank you very much. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming, but before everybody leaves, I just want to thank a couple of people for making this event happen. You don't understand, I've been chasing Peter for about a year. I have. But first, I'd like to thank Alyssa Mason, who actually made this happen. With Alyssa, thank you. Thank you so much. She put all this thing together, so thank you so much. Also, I want to thank Kara Dake. Thank you so much for helping me out here as well. Also, Rohit Basi. And also, if you guys come, we have more wine, more food outside, but also ice cream sandwiches, and also presented by the Fair Trade, which is a company I've been incubating for the past year. These guys are bringing really interesting, artisanal, curated experience to the entire world. They've been working with NetJets, Vanity Fair for quite some time. And it was really great for them to come here tonight to really start hosting, and they love Peter. And they've been like, hey, I'm bringing Peter Diamandis. Like, we're there right now. So thank you, guys. Please, we're going to hang out for another hour outside. One last thing for you, Peter. I get to get the last question, sorry. What would you say to yourself 20 years ago?
Let's see, what year is this? 1996. Let's see. Go find Larry and Sergey and. So I don't know whether I would say anything different. I have just followed my heart and worked relentless on the things that I'm passionate about. I've got two speeds, on or dead.
Wow.
No, I'm serious, and a lot of you have the same element. I am lucky. I consider myself very lucky that I found an early passion and have had the ability to follow it, right? If you had made it 30 years ago, I would have probably said, skip medical school, which I did to make my parents happy, and go and pursue space. Or I might have said, I loved coding and computers, but never felt that was a future I could go. So I might have steered myself there, and I probably would have gone more into .com companies in '93 or '94 instead of following space companies. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything. There have been again. I think if you know your mission and purpose in life, even if it's hard, and you can pursue it, there's joy on the path. And then it's important not to try and take a moonshot from the beginning. It's what's your very first step? What's your, Peter Thiel talked about 0 to 1, and that's a great book and critically important. And then it's 1 to 2, and then 2 to 4, and then 4 to 8, and it's not being unsatisfied with wherever you are in your life. It's the beginning It's the first day of the rest of your life today.
Thank you. Guys, give it up for Peter Diamandis.